Inquiry is into an appeal made by Royal Homes and Paul and Linda Buckingham. My name is Krista Masters. I'm a town planner and I've been appointed to conduct this inquiry into the refusal of planning permission dated 8th of June 2023 for a full application for residential development of 269 dwellings, use class C3, 2 times vehicular access points off Dunton Road, formal and informal open space, hardness of landscaping including acoustic barrier and associated infrastructure. All mobile phones should be turned off and switched to silent, please. In opening the inquiry, I will explain for the benefit of interested persons and the general public some particular features of the procedure for this appeal and confirm the appearances. I shall then go through the matters of clarification and documentation, confirm the main issues before the appeal, deal with any submissions and confirm the ongoing programme. Firstly, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the appellants, the Rule 6 Party and the Council, and most particularly any interested third parties, residents or organisations. There is a strong government initiative to speed up the whole planning inquiry process, and as a result of this objective, the evidence will be heard by a combination of roundtable discussions and cross-examination. I will be inviting interested third parties, including local residents who may wish to take part as appropriate. Alternatively, individuals may choose to simply make a brief statement of their concerns at a convenient point in the programme. In terms of procedure, I shall follow the procedure set out in the 2000 Inquiry Procedure Rules. For those of you not familiar with those rules, I shall summarise them for you now. I shall in a moment set out what I consider the main issues to be. Then, on the assumption they wish to do so, I would invite the appellant's advocate to make a brief opening statement. I shall then invite the council's advocate to make an opening statement, and then the Rule 6 Party should they wish to do so. Based on the suggested programme I've circulated to the main parties, I will then invite the advocates to call their witnesses to present their evidence, and they will be cross-examined by the council's appellant's advocates and re-examined by their own advocate. Interested parties will be permitted to ask additional questions if they are opposing the development. There is, however, no need to repeat any questions already asked. I should also point out this is not the point in time at which those parties make their case. Similarly, in order to ask questions, you must have already elected to speak and be prepared to answer questions afterwards should they arise. I may have questions myself during the above procedure of the witnesses called. We will then have a discussion on conditions and the Section 106 agreement and any other matters, and there will then be a closing address of the main parties and any applications for costs if relevant. This is standard procedure. It does not indicate that I've made my mind up on the case in any way. I'm not inviting any applications for costs, but if anyone intends to make an application for an award of costs, this should be done before the close of the inquiry. In addition, I have the power to initiate award of costs whether or not any application have been made by parties, and if I were to do this, we follow a written process with relevant parties after the appeal decision is issued. Let's confirm in the first instance the appearances, although I'm aware from the correspondence who the main parties are. I should now formally like to take those names of those who wish to speak. Firstly, on behalf of the appellants, please.
Good morning, Madam. As you know, I've given you a list with all these names on, and the list has been circulated to all the other parties in the room already. My name is Zach Simons, along with Mr. Edward Arash-Begian, both of Council. We're instructed by Mr. Andrew Fisher of Stantec, the appellants. And we've got 3 witnesses, Madam. The first is Mr. Ian Wharton, who's an Associate Director at Ardent, who will be giving evidence on highways, transport and topics of particular locational sustainability. He sits immediately behind me. Mr. Chard, Mr. Matthew Chard, is Director of Landscape Planning and Design at Stantec, and he's provided the evidence on character and appearance and greenbelt matters, and he sits 2 rows behind me, immediately behind me. And then finally, Mr. Andrew Fisher is Planning Director at Stantec, and he gives evidence on the overall planning balance, planning policy matters. Mr. Fisher sits immediately to my left. So that's our team, Madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for the benefit of interested parties, Mr. Stacey, who has submitted a statement.
I should have said that. I absolutely, of course, but yes, I should have said that for reasons that the inquiry is aware of to do with ill health. Mr. Stacey, who has provided a proof of evidence in respect of affordable housing, is not available, which is obviously a great shame, and we'll we wish him well. And so in those circumstances, how we propose to manage that part of the evidence, obviously everyone's got his proof of evidence, you've got his proof of evidence, we'll simply have to read it and take it as read. Of course, the good news is Mr. Fisher does give evidence on the weight to be attributed to affordable housing overall. He of course relies on Mr. Stacey's evidence. And so to the extent there are any questions about the weight to be attributed to the delivery of affordable housing in the overall balance, they can be directed to Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. And then on behalf of the council, please.
Now I'm Kate Ollie Odwell, BY, instructed by Basildon Borough Council for Dairy. And I'll be calling Mr. Lewis Reynolds on my left, on the openness of the agreement in the background, and Mr. Keith Hartist on my right, dealing with all the other matters.
Thank you. And the Rule 6 Party.
Yes, good morning. I'm David Daz, counsel for the Steepleview Residents Association. I've been instructed by them. I will be assisting them as much as I can during the inquiry. There'll be other people standing in as advocates during the proceedings. Intend to call Joe Gibson and possibly Claire Williams to do their activities on behalf of the Residents Association.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I check, are any other members of the public who are here who are wishing to speak? Raise your hands, okay. So what I'm going to do in a moment is table your names, and I need you to let me know if you're part of the Steepleview Residents Association or not. In the programme, we have allocated Thursday morning for interested parties and the Residents Association to speak. If that isn't possible and you cannot return on Thursday morning and you would prefer to say what you'd like to say this morning, that's fine as well. So when we go through, so three questions, your name, whether you're part of the Steepleview Residents Association, and if you need to speak today or if you can come back on Thursday, please. Yeah.
Sorry, in relation to the Residents Association, I've got my instructions direct from the committee. There may be members of the public who wish to speak individually, and may be a member, but obviously my instructions come from the committee and the two individuals are behind.
I understand that, yeah. Okay, so we'll start from the left and work down. Yeah. Hi, my name's Lorraine McKenna. Sorry, could you just speak up slightly?
My name's Lorraine McKenna.
Lorraine, could you spell your surname for me?
McLennan.
Yeah.
I am a member of the Residents Association, but I'll be speaking as a member of the public. And unfortunately, I can't return on Thursday, so if I can speak today, that'd be great.
My name's I'm a member of the Steepleview Residents Association.
Sorry, could you spell your surname for me? Yeah.
And I'd like to speak this morning as I'm trying to take place.
Okay, anybody else?
Sally Mulders,
Could you spell your surname for me, please?
MUYLDERS. So I am a member of the Residents Association, but I'm speaking as a member of the public and a resident, and I'd like to speak today.
Okay, anybody else?
Scott Gibson, GIBSIN. I am a member of the Residents Association, but again, I'm speaking as a member of the public. I'd like to speak this morning if possible, please.
Okay.
I'm Annalise Woodford. I'm President.
Sorry, could you spell your first name for me, Annalise. Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Councillor Terry Sargent.
Is that T-E-R-R-Y or I, aren't they?
S-A-R-G-E-N-T.
Yeah.
I'm the group councillor and I'd like to speak to that.
It's not a member of the Residents Association.
No.
No.
I'm Councillor Stuart Allen, Basildon Council representing the ward of Crouch Ward, which covers this
Or is that Alan?
S-T-U-A-R-T.
E-N, is that Stuart?
I'll speak today.
Not a member of the Residents Association.
No, just the ward councillor for this area.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Sue Tisserman. I'm a member of the Residents Association. I wish to speak today as a member of the public, and my surname is spelled T-I-F-F sugar I-M-A-N.
Anything else? Okay. Right, so I'll come back to, once we've heard the opening addresses from the main parties, I'll come back to you about making your statements for those that, so there's nobody else that wants to speak on Thursday, is that correct? Thank you. So in terms of general administration and documentation, I confirm that I've received confirmation from the council that the formal statutory public notification of the inquiry has been completed, and I will now turn to confirmation of the documents before the inquiry. I and the main parties will be using the core documents list that is available via the webpage. I'll be accessing those documents through the local authority. So we just need to bear that in mind whilst we're accessing documents as the inquiry progresses. There's two documents that I've asked parties to provide. One is hard copies of section 106 and suggested conditions. Thank you very much. And secondly, I asked the council to prepare an overlay plan relative to
Just to confirm, is that yesterday's version of the 106?
Yes.
I have one for you, sorry to
I did ask through the case officer for the council's the Greenbelt witness to provide an overlay plan of the various documents that you've referred to. Is that you have that message through?
I didn't actually either that, sorry about that. I hope that wouldn't take us too long to prepare though.
Okay, when we get to adjournment this morning, I'll speak to the case officer.
I've got the email, so I can show you some of the.
You did receive the email.
We got it.
We got it, but we
So
haven't received.
I can have a chat.
Whilst we're here, do you want to forward it on to the council now so they can start actioning?
Yes.
It's just the relevant parts of your evidence, as I've noted, and you referred to the sort of parts of the evidence base for the withdrawal plan, and how I just wanted an overlay plan of those areas marking up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Since the appeal has been submitted, the parties have been working towards resolving the reasons for refusal And as part of that, we have two statements of common ground, one of them on sustainability matters with Essex County Council and the appellant, and a second statement of common ground on planning matters between the council and the appellant. Mr. Dad's going to check that the Rule 6 party, did they have any input into those documents?
No, we didn't, and we weren't asked to.
Update on wire 6, so I've received that. Where is that sent out in terms of?
It is in an agreed form as between the appellant, the local planning authority and the county council. So it's obviously it's moved on since an earlier version, I think, was sent to the planning inspectorate.
And the local authority, just for benefits of interested parties, the local authority confirmed by way of their statement of case that they are not contesting the full reason for refusal in relation to air quality. So conditions I've now received, those are, Stas, have you commented on those?
No, we haven't. I've received a copy this morning. We're unlikely to make any observations, so I will have a brief look later at what we desire. But we're sort of behind the local authorities over what they agree is would be acceptable to us.
If that does change during the course of the next week and a half, could you make sure that you send a note through to the office rather than just presenting any changes when we have that session?
Yes.
So I'm aware of what your comments are. And in terms of correspondence from third parties, all letters received will be taken into account and the points raised addressed as part of my decision. Again, all of the documents that I just referred to are available through the inquiry web page, details of which are available through the local authority web page. I will now turn to consider the running order of the inquiry. Cross-examination will take place as I've already outlined. All written evidence will be taken as read as is available for discussion or cross-examination. In terms of the roundtable discussion, it is anticipated that active participation in the roundtable discussion on conditions and the Section 106 agreement will be primarily by the respective witnesses and parties concerned, together with their advocates, including any including also party where relevant. In this instance, I will lead the discussion, introduce each point with some indication of my understanding and the views being advanced. Then the discussion will begin. This is likely to take place next week. Finally, on the last day of the inquiry, we will hear from the Rule 6 party of the council and then the appellant who have the closing submissions, with the appellants having the last word. In terms of site visits, I've already made an unaccompanied visit to the site and the surrounding area from public viewpoints, so I have a good understanding of the site and the immediate surrounding context. I should be aiming to revisit the site during next week and also undertake an accompanied site visit, and it is my intention that this will take place in the early part of next week. There will be no discussion of any evidence presented during the site visit. In light of the above, the main issues as I see them and focus for the inquiry will be the effect of the proposal on the openness of the green belt and the purposes of including land within it, and whether the site is in an accessible location with regards to local services and facilities. Highways matters are not in dispute, although I note that the Rule 6 party have comments regarding character and appearance, and this will also be addressed as part of my report. Those not identified as separate main issue. I'm now just going to briefly ask the advocates some indicative timings, please, for the programming. So I've just got a time guide. Just for everybody's benefit, I'm visiting most days between 5 and 5:30, with a mid-morning and afternoon breaks and a slightly longer lunch break. I would anticipate starting at 9:30 after today, but that will be subject to discussion with the parties later on. So can I just get an indication of timings, please, from the council? Yeah.
Ma'am, I expect I might be 30 to 45 minutes with Mr. Lewis in chief. I'll try to make it 30. Mr. Lewis, Reynolds, sorry. Lewis Reynolds. And, I could be as long as an hour and a half with Mr. Keith Argest. Again, I'll try to limit that, but being realistic, it could take a little while. Okay, I'd like to comment on a few of the proofs. Cross-examination, I would say broadly up to an hour with each of their three, and if I'm longer or quicker than I expect, that will be reflected. So that overall, I should take about 3 hours.
2 to 2.5 hours each for them. I don't expect to be asking many questions to the all 6 party witnesses. We'll allow, say, up to 15 minutes or something. Might be less. If we say 45 minutes, up to 45 minutes for Mr. Charlie, Mr. Walton, and for Mr. Fisher, if we say up to an hour. To us on the face of it, but we should hopefully with some time to spare get through the all evidence slightly closer to
Okay, and
Yes, I was only expecting this time some questions of those records no more than 15 minutes. It may be that those questions will be in writing in any event, just to clarification really questions. I don't anticipate us questioning anyone else.
okay.
Yes, only Reynolds. I mean, we anticipate that the local authority will probably ask some questions that we don't want to duplicate.
Yeah.
So therefore, whilst we might reserve that you may allow us a point of clarification that may arise, but we don't anticipate really playing an active role. But a few questions of clarification if you is that clear?
I just want to clarify, when you say questions in writing, when I don't want you to be submitting documents, because our whole point is that
of course, so we've already prepared for questions and some points of clarification. They will be asked for.
right, okay, sorry, okay, that's fine, thank you. So just to clarify, the parties know other documents, I'm not requesting any, but nothing that anybody is intending to submit during the course of the inquiry. No, good.
Can I just mention that I understand Mr. Reynolds wants to correct a couple of errors mostly in his proof. Oh, that's fine. Okay, in which case then we'll move towards here and the appellant's opening submission. So for members of the public, we'll hear from the appellant, the local authority, then the rules party, and those parties who told me, interested persons, that they are unable to attend on Thursday morning. I will then be hearing from you, but I must emphasise that as we have the Residents Association as a Rule 6 party, and they have a formal seat of the proceedings, it's important that you're not duplicating what the Residents Association are already covering. And similarly, if a number of you have the same point, it is more helpful for me for one person to make that point rather than you repeat the same point between you. So please bear that in mind when you do speak. So over to you, Mr. Simon.
Thank you. And I should say, I've given this to Dad just so everyone's aware of sort of mini stack of copies that will be distributed, and this will go no doubt on the council website as well.
These micros only work if you have to turn them off, so please remember to.
Thank you. This part of Essex has been let down by the planning system. Years go by, decades pass, national policies come and go. But through it all, this council has managed to keep its head buried firmly in the sand. There's been no strategic review of Basildon's green belt for decades. New plan making exercises have been tried, they have failed. The adopted plan for Basildon reflects the needs of another era. The breakdown in the plan-led system here has had real consequences for real people. Most of all, and for many years, this council has not come anywhere remotely close to meeting its needs, including needs for market and affordable housing. The shortfalls aren't marginal, they're staggering. We aren't talking about missing the mark by tens or even hundreds of homes. We're talking about thousands, many thousands, with all the terrible social, economic and environmental consequences that failing to plan will bring. Families unable to afford somewhere to live, thousands on the housing register, unsustainable solutions with people being forced to find a home further away from where they work, shop and socialise. Other inspectors have recently called the position in Basildon acute, extremely bleak, stark and extremely serious. How have we got here? The real reason is the chronic inability of this council to front up to the need to bring forward sensible development proposals in the Metropolitan Greenbelt. From 1957, when the Greenbelt was introduced to Basildon, until its 1998 local plan, which even now forms the basis of its statutory development plan, all of this district was within the Greenbelt. The detailed inner boundary around Basildon was defined for the first time in the 1998 plan, which was designed to accommodate housing requirements defined by the Essex Structure Plan, adopted in 1982. Those boundaries have never been revised. Today, 63% of the district in the Greenbelt, everything outside the urban boundaries of Circle B appeal site, which means that, as the council accepted through its now shelved local plan, if it is to come anywhere near meeting its needs, release of the Greenbelt or release of Greenbelt land isn't a choice. It's a certainty. There's literally no other option. And the council has accepted that inevitability many times over several years. Of course, in areas of the country where the plan-led system is doing its job, national planning policy expects that sensible plan reviews at least every 5 years will manage those releases, but that's not happening here. Nowhere near, and not for a long time. As we'll explain, the local plan here was adopted in 98, with the planning period running to 2001. It was designed in a totally different national policy context for the council to address the needs of a different generation, in particular the requirements set by the Essex Structure Plan adopted in 1982. Many moons before the radical shift brought about by the first MPPF, which made meeting objectively assessed needs for housing not just a material consideration, but one of particular standing. The basis on which its Greenbelt boundaries were drawn is now completely out of date. A new plan for Basildon was submitted to the Secretary of State for examination in March 2019, and through that plan, the council proposed that swathes of Greenbelt land be released. Of course, this site was proposed for release from the Greenbelt and proposed for allocation for housing through that plan, a site H9. However, in February of 2022, this council's members voted to withdraw its emerging local plan, and we're back to square one. In the council's latest draft local development scheme, which was talked back in the last year, officers don't envisage adopting another plan until the end of 2027, almost 30 years after the local plan was adopted. And as that local development scheme notes, it might take longer still. In this district, a plan-led system has broken, and our case is simple. There's no short or medium-term prospect for being fixed. The council's housing delivery test score is 41%. That is the seventh worst in all of England. On its own figures, the shortfall in housing delivery over the next 5 years will be 3,936 homes. And on our figures, the position is starker still, shortfall of 4,430 homes. On affordable housing, in the last 8 years alone, council's shortfall in delivery against its needs is over 2,600 homes and over 1,600 households currently waiting on the register. So, real issue before this inquiry is whether the many people in need now should have to wait another 5 years, another 10 years, or however long it takes for Basildon to actually adopt a plan and for sites to come forward in accordance with that plan, or whether more urgent needs require more urgent solutions. Within the last 12 months, 2 inspectors have allowed appeals on sites which have, just like this one, been proposed for release from the Greenbelt and allocation for residential development and now withdrawn. Basildon local plan, those are decisions in the court documents. Same approach can be taken here, because the council's own evidence base, which supported the proposed allocations, demonstrates over the course of many years that this site is appropriate for significant residential development. The council identified this site as part of a, quote, primary area for development as long ago as 2013 in its Greenbelt study, which noted that the area is heavily surrounded by major infrastructure, which noted that Dunton Road now forms a more definitive boundary in this area, the A127, especially, we're told, as land between the A127 and Dunton Road is low-lying and mainly flat, so as not to disrupt the views to St Mary's Church, which is on a very steep terrain. And the council said the open areas in the north beyond Dunton Road form a clear separation to where the countryside begins. Development on the site was supported in 2018 by the council's housing options topic paper and its Greenbelt topic paper, which noted that developing the site would lead to no significant wider harm to urban sprawl. That development here would be less harmful in relation to the countryside than sites located in, quote, more rural locations. But landscaping and layout can, quote, minimise any harm to openness, and that in the end, the remaining Greenbelt in this location, the council said, until the north, will continue to function as currently in its purposes. And the council's support for the site was confirmed again in 2021, when its HELA exercise found that the site is suitable, available, and achievable for residential development. Mr. Jarve explains that the appeal scheme can be accommodated on this site without any substantially adverse effects on landscape features, the site's character, or its surroundings. And of course, he's not alone in that view. Mr. Lewis Reynolds of Place Services, who now gives evidence for the council, confirmed as recently as March of this year that development in this location could form an appropriate extension to Steeple View insofar that it would form a, quote, stronger edge to the Greenbelt. He said, Mr. Reynolds said, with appropriate mitigation, the site's landscape has, quote, capacity to accommodate development, he said, without suffering detrimental effects on its character. Any visual effects, he said, are generally, quote, localised and can likely be mitigated to reduce their significance of effect. On locational sustainability, Basildon is, of course, the key town and main urban area in this borough. It has, by some distance, the borough's widest range of retail, leisure, community, employment and transport facilities, including obviously the mainline rail station. A range of substantial improvements have been delivered through the 106 obligation you just received, including a greatly enhanced bus service along Dunton Road, benefiting new residents, as well as the existing wider residential population along the route, and for footway and cycleway improvements. The Essex County Council, which of course is the highways authority, agrees that a wide range of services are within a reasonable walking and cycling distance of the site, and that this is a, quote, sustainable location for development. We do not, in this brief opening, respond to the points taken by the Rule 6 party, but we will, of course, to the extent we need to in our evidence and closing submissions. Of course, in the language of Greenbelt policy, the site's going to be less open if new homes are built. And yes, because part of the site's next to but outside the settlement boundary, it's deemed, quote unquote, countryside, even though, as I said, that boundary is a relic of another plan-making era. Which means that our scheme would, in the language of the framework, encroach into that countryside, albeit in a very limited way. But that is, with respect to the kind of narrow approach to development management, to prevent this council from getting out of the mess that they are in. We know that until recently, the council was promoting the site for release from the Greenbelt to meet its burrowing needs for housing. The plan may have been shelved, but the needs it was seeking to address remain. And the reasons for releasing this site for residential development are just as profound today as they were then. Which means in the end, Madam, for all the documents before you, the question is simple, that the scheme's benefits clearly outweigh its harms. If they do, permission should be granted, applying the test and framework. And striking that balance, we've got to remember that the council's officers have recommended our scheme for approval, not once, not twice, but 3 times, noting among other points that the reason for refusal on the grounds that the site is within an unsustainable location cannot be sustained. They also found that the scheme accorded the statutory development plan when read as a whole. They also found that the scheme's benefits clearly outweigh its harms, so as to amount to the very special circumstances required under 148 of the framework. Even on the council's case as modified at this inquiry, the position is, it now says, through Mr. Hodges, quote, finally balanced, and the benefits of the scheme should still, we're told, attract substantial weight. The council was, until recently, itself promoting the allocation of this site for residential development, and of course, as you know, there are no other technical constraints to delivery in relation to highways, heritage, ecology, air quality, drainage, flooding, noise, or indeed anything. Our case is straightforward. Given the disastrous scale of shortfalls in delivery in Basildon, the scheme's benefits are profound. The imperative to bring them forward on the sustainable side is compelling, and they clearly outweigh what will in the end be a localised impact to the site itself and its immediate surroundings. And for those reasons, which will develop in our evidence in closing, the balance tilts decisively in favour of granting planning permission. We will ask you to allow the appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Simons.
First, whether the site is in a location which is or can be made sustainable. Mr. Hodges draws our attention to the fact that the site is in a remote position off a narrow rural lane, constrained by the A127 to the south, served by infrequent bus services, not readily accessible to local shops, amenities or services, and that there are limited opportunities to improve pedestrian and cycle links. It's clear from the Essex Design Guide, to which Mr. Hodges draws attention, that development should be laid out to maximise proximity to facilities and public transport, and to encourage walking and cycling instead of driving. The guide states that no part of a residential area should be farther than 400 metres from a regular bus route, 600 metres from a primary school, or 1,500 metres from a secondary school. IHT providing for journeys on foot, quoted in the appellant's transport assessment, explains desirable, acceptable, and preferred maximum distances: 400 to 500 metres, 800 to 1,000, and 1,200 to 2,000 metres respectively. An 800 metre or 20-minute walking distance is considered comfortable accessible DFT manual for streets and TCPA 20-minute neighbourhoods. It's important also to factor in that those with disabilities, older people and the very young may well take longer to walk the same distance. Potential barriers to walking in whatever form, steps, the gradient of the land or the need to cross a busy road must also be weighed. Mr. Hardis points out that the shortest walking routes in Table 1 of the Statement of Common Ground require, for all facilities or services located south of the A127, walking alongside that road and then crossing it. He explains the barrier that that can represent, and it is in any event a very poor quality pedestrian environment, and that some walking trips will therefore be discouraged. Further, and as will no doubt be explored in the inquiry, none of the existing facilities listed can be considered sensibly to be within comfortable preferred walking distance of any of the proposed houses on the site. One primary school, one dentist, and one secondary school which has no available places at all are located within the potential maximum walking distance. Clearly these distances are fixed and cannot be improved upon in the same way that, for example, bus services potentially can. The council's position is that it is reasonable to conclude that for pedestrian trips, the site is not and cannot be made to be reasonably accessible to local services and facilities. As for public transport, clearly the existing 256 service passing along Dunton Road cannot be considered to represent a service of sufficient frequency to support feasible use of public transport. Neither are the High Road North and Willowfield services of a frequency that could reasonably be described as regular. Those bus stops are also located considerably further than the Essex Design Guide recommended walking distances to bus stops, which is 400 metres, being between 875 and 1280 metres from the proposed dwellings. Leydon railway station is 2.5 to 3 kilometres away, greater than the potential maximum walking distances. Mr. Hardis stresses that if the development goes ahead, there will therefore need to be a significant improvement in bus provision to service the site in order to make sure that it can attain an acceptable level of public transport accessibility. He notes the proposed financial contribution, but is not clear at present as to the confirmation of the proposed route, frequency and time period for the proposed service. Whether the proposal makes adequate provision for any additional need for local services, amenities and infrastructure arising from the development. The reasons he gives, Mr. Hardis gives only brief comment on this main issue. I refer to section 4 of his written evidence. The effect of the proposal on the openness of the green belt and the purposes of including land within it. Mr. Lewis Reynolds finds that the site provides an important function in both spatial and visual openness, containing development sprawl from the south into the open countryside. Based on the degree of activity likely to be generated, he judges that the scheme will cause substantial harm to the openness of the green belt. Most of the site is open with a wide visual envelope, and Mr. Reynolds' view is that the dominance of the development of this location will be particularly apparent given the direction of travel along the public right-of-way network, where the proposal will be viewed as encroachment when heading northwards and south. It refers to the scale of the change of views and the loss of the wide panoramic views and openness. The open panoramic views will become heavily constrained and dominated by residential dwellings. Mr. Hardis adopts Mr. Reynolds' evidence in this regard. And we suggest that it is, or will be apparent on the site visit, how markedly open the site currently is. Whether the harm by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm is clearly outweighed by other considerations. In other words, the assessment of the planning balance. Clearly the development will be inappropriate development in the green belt. It proposes the construction of new buildings and does not fall within any of the exceptions set out in paragraph 149 of the NPPF, and is not a form of development that preserves the openness of the green belt, reference to paragraph 150 of the NPPF. The scheme would inflict substantial harm on the openness of green belt and conflict with its purposes of preventing urban sprawl and safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. Very special circumstances do not exist to allow the approval of this inappropriate development. As Mr. Hargis finds, the planning considerations could be considered to be finely balanced, meaning that the planning committee members' decision to refuse permission is reasonable, even though it can seem surprising when the considered opinion of the professional officers is overturned. This fine balance means that the harm is not clearly outweighed, as will be required by the test to be applied. Mr. Hargis notes generously the factors in favour of the scheme going ahead: the poor housing land supply at present, on which he duly places substantial weight, the large number of affordable homes proposed, but would only place limited weight on the asserted economic benefits of the scheme, the need for greenbelt release so that housing can be built upon it, the social and public benefits, and the environmental benefits. Those are not sufficient to outweigh the harm to the openness of the greenbelt identified, and the fact that the site is not easily accessible by sustainable modes of transport, in particular walking. In due course, therefore, the council expects to invite you now to dismiss this appeal.
That's,
Yes,
I've received some emails, so I don't need that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Could I just interrupt you, madam? Local residents were very anxious to take part in your meeting. We can only hear you as a mumble.
Me?
Well, no, the whole thing. We can hardly. I think I speak for most people here. We can't hear you.
I do apologise.
No, that's all right.
Yeah,
but you have microphones.
yeah, they are on.
Are you able to turn them on?
I'll have to find out.
Sometimes they can turn volume down.
Okay, are we able to turn the microphones up? The speakers on.
Will do.
Okay, the council are going to see if they can get the volume turned up at the back there, so hopefully that helps.
Mr. Inspector, well, if you bring the microphone close to you.
Yeah.
And then if you talk into we have one that most residents say it's actually really close to you. So I've told the
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Dunton, over to you.
Yes, good morning. Thank you firstly for allowing the Rule 6 party to be present and to do an opening statement. In the Inspector's Case Management Conference note of the 19th of September, there were 4 main issues identified: whether the site and the location which is or can be made sustainable, whether the proposal makes adequate provision for additional needs, local services, amenities and infrastructure right up to development, the effect of the proposal on the openness of the greenbelt.
Would it be possible to start again?
I'll stop that sentence again. So the effect of the proposal on the openness of the greenbelt and the purposes of including land within. Whether the harm by reason of inappropriateness or any other harm is clearly outweighed by other considerations, so as to amount to a very special circumstance necessary to justify the development. The Steeple View Residents Association is particularly concerned with about issues 1, 3 and 4 and the adverse impacts on the landscape character and visual amenity of the proposed development. And in this opening statement, we will summarise these views these issues. Sustainability. The appeals site comprises of around 9.5 hectares of agricultural land between Dunton Road to the north and the A127 to the south. Access to the development is proposed to be taken from two new access points on Dunton Road, a narrow country lane without footpaths. The new houses will be between 1 and 1.5 miles from Leighton town centre, and to get to it and local schools you will need to necessarily cross the A127. It is submitted all local communities fall far outside the distance within which one could reasonably expect residents to walk. There is an infrequent bus service, as you've already heard, and although there are said to be opportunities for walking and cycling, the reality is that this will be a heavily car-dependent development. The Residents Association does not doubt that the local highway network has capacity to accommodate the likely increase in car traffic, but this is not the only measure of sustainability. You, madam, will visit the site, you said already you have this morning, you will go again, and the surrounding area, and you will see for yourself how realistic it is to expect future residents of the development to walk or cycle or take the bus to local shops, services and employment opportunities. In the residents' view, it is not sustainable development, and it supports the council's objection to the proposal on this ground. Effects on the Greenbelt. The appeal site and the A127 to the south form part of the Greenbelt immediately abutting the North Settlement boundary of Basildon. This part of the Greenbelt, designated parcel 12, was considered in the council's 2017 Greenbelt review, which noted a number of landscape features, including views across the parcel extremely open from the A127, Dunton Road, through Greenbelt Shield, the busy A127 road, junction to the west. A127 forms a strong barrier between the parcel and the urban edge of Basildon. Views across the farmland to St Mary's of Virgin Church look bursted to the north, but flat terrain in contrast to the steep topographic of the adjacent Greenbelt Pass to the north. The sense of separation of open land from Basildon created by the A127. The review summarised Parcel 20's contribution to Greenbelt purposes as follows. The parcel was well-defined boundaries, whilst ribbon development is present to the north-west of the parcel, it is separated from the urban edge of Basildon and not considered to be urban sprawl. There was no development extended from Steeple View in the east to the parcel or from Leighton in the south. The parcel was therefore considered to contribute to purpose one, i.e. to check on unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas. There are views across the parcel from the A127 Dunton to the St Mary's Virgin Church and Bursted, as I said. So whilst there is some development to the north parcel, of west, much of the parcel is farmland and open in nature. As a result, parcel partially contributes to purpose 3, i.e. safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. It is not disputed that the appeal scheme is inappropriate development and therefore harmful in principle. We then will undermine the appeal site contribution to the two Greenbelt purposes considered above, and will harm the openness of the Greenbelt in this area, along with having an adverse impact on both landscape character and visual amenity. However, the extent of this harm is not agreed. Although the council officers consider the main harm in relation to urban sprawl, but say it's not sufficient when viewed in the wider context, but could be considered harmful at a local level, this underplays the harm. The proposal is for major development of 169 dwellings road, 269 dwellings road, parking areas, fences and other infrastructure across 7.4 hectares of the site to the north of a clear, strong and defensive settlement boundary. The A127. Whilst no individual scheme of development is likely to affect the Greenbelt's strategic function, this does not mean one should trivialise the harm that this development will undoubtedly cause to the purpose of checking the unrestricted sprawl of the large built-up areas. Likewise, the extent of the encroachment proposed across the site devoid of built development is extensive. As to the openness, the appeal proposal would introduce a substantial built development footprint and volume in form of houses and supported development, as I've already indicated. The change will be accompanied by increased activity from prospective occupants and visitors reasonably associated with a residential use. In combination, the appeal proposal would significantly reduce the visual and spatial sense of openness in the area of the appeal site. The residents' view is that the site provides an important function of both a spatial and visual openness, containing development sprawl from the south into the open countryside. This is clearly set out in the 2007 Greenbelt Review. Based on the degree of activity likely to be generated, we believe that the proposed scheme will have a substantial harm on the openness of the Greenbelt. In the residents' view, the Greenbelt harms are substantial and the combination of them should attach very substantial weight. Paragraph 148 of the NPPF states, when considering any planning application, local planning authorities should ensure substantial weight is given to the harm to the Greenbelt. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the Greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harms resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. This paragraph requires all the harms, Greenbelt and non-Greenbelt, that would result from the appeal scheme to be balanced against its benefits. Only if the benefits clearly outweigh the harms should the appeal be allowed. In addition to the Greenbelt harms and lack of sustainability summarised above, there are also harms to the character and appearance of the landscape. And on the issue, the Play Services Landscape and Visual Impact Review commissioned by the Council included that 1. The landscape compartment to the west is medium-high sensitivity, and the landscape component to the east, beyond the woodland block, will be medium sensitivity to development. The overall magnitude of the change would result if the site was developed as a residential development by the medium as the proposed development. The partial change to the existing landscape sector may be affected as a relatively extensive area. The proposed development resulting in a partial deterioration of the existing landscape resource, and that the existing value characteristics feature would be partly lost. Overall, we would judge the significance of the effect on the landscape as moderate at first. Obviously, you're going to hear Mr. Reynolds. The dominance of the proposed development will be particularly apparent given the direction of travel along public footpaths. Network proposal views as encroached when heading northwards and southwards along footpaths. The site will be most visible from near and medium distance viewpoints. Locations within approximately 2 kilometre radius from the site includes all of the other user groups, which is set out before page 17. Additionally, the wide and long distance views into the countryside and beyond towards the north available from within the site from the A127 are considered to be visual receptors. The reception will experience substantial visual effects as a result of the proposed change to the land form, interruption of existing open views with urban built from form, and change to the landscape character. As such, the appellant's LVIA does not accurately acknowledge the scale of the change in views in regards to the loss of wide panoramic views and openness, because the comparison would inevitably become unbalanced due to the scale, mass and quantum of the proposed residential development. And the open panoramic views would in turn become heavily constrained and dominated by the 269 dwellings, vehicle access points on Dunton Road, hard and soft landscape, road infrastructure, acoustic barriers to fencing, and general prices of all that wood urbanisation would bring. Furthermore, though these impacts have for the most part been deemed adverse, we will judge the adverse impacts to be greater than currently judged within the LVIA, and that we will also deem moderate adverse effects as substantial. These are minor adverse effects, these are not minor adverse effects, Whether one applies better than local plan, say policies, and the MPPF, significantly weight should be given to the harm to the local landscape and appearance the scheme would cause. Set against those harms of the scheme, particularly the provisions on market affordable housing, the council's latest assessment of 5-year supply is that they can demonstrate only 1.85 years. The SRA accepts that this shows a significant shortfall in supply of deliverable sites over the next 5 years in light of this substantial weight can be given to the contribution scheme. The appeal scheme would have to supply housing in the district in the next 5 years. Whilst there will be other benefits arising as well, these are far less weighty than the provision of housing. Now, I know my learned friend raised some criticism in his open regarding the many thousand houses, social and economic failure for families to not get off the housing list, and that the local authority in some way has been criticised by putting its head in the sand, as he said this morning. But we understand that the council said it wants to see homes built faster to a higher standard. The council expects home builders, house builders to do their part, build as quickly as possible once permission is granted. Whilst the council may be criticised by others, they have this morning, for having a significant shortfall in housing land supply. The affordable housing is not for want of identifying land for homes within the borough. In fact, Basildon Borough has 2,322 specific homes identified as deliverable within the next 5 years, and has given a further 4,487 permission for homes. I know my learned friend said this morning in his opening that 4,430 less homes are needed, but the local authority has permission for homes. But the council says it cannot count these because the developers are not going to build out these sites within the next 5 years. 700 homes in Gardens Lane South, 492 homes on the Market Square, 495 homes in Basildon Town Square, and 2,800 homes in Eastgate area. The council is caught between a hard rock and a hard place, granting permission on one hand and the developers not building out on the other. The council is being criticised for not having enough deliverable sites over the last 5 years. But as I say, if those developers revert the permissions given, then the 5-year supply will be met. Finally, it is the potential harm to the greenbelt by reasons of inappropriateness and other harms resulting from the proposal clearly outweighed by other considerations. Question mark. In the residents' view, it is not. Whilst not shying away from the real need for homes in Basildon Borough, the residents consider that the appeal scheme will be a major intrusion into the greenbelt, causing substantial harm to the proposed purpose and openness of the greenbelt, and significant harm to the landscape character and appearance. Accordingly, the Steepleview Residents Association remains opposed to the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daz. So we'll now hear from the local residents who've elected to speak this morning. I just need to repeat what I said on the basis that I've been told that you're not able to hear it back. Mr. Daz has summarised the case, and as they are appearing the Steepleview Residents Association as a Ward 6 party, it is not necessary to repeat any comments that Mr. Daz has already outlined and that he is making during the inquiry as it sits, and indeed it's not an efficient use of inquiry time to do so. So on that note, and again, as I'll also repeat, that it's not necessary to repeat any particular concerns. If another resident has already raised them, you might have to turn this down slightly because I'm getting quite confused. So on that basis, is it Ms. McLennan? Would you like to take the seat here, please? Thank you. And then could the next person, Ms. Moore, get ready to replace her as we go through? Thank you. Yes, just this one here, yeah. And then if you press the button on the right hand side to speak.
Good morning. I apologise in advance if I pause occasionally because I believe that some of the points I made Mrs. Dunton has covered, so I'll just have to double check and don't include them. So, our councillors have voted at 2 separate planning meetings to stop this development. They are the voice of the people and know the local area and what is right and wrong for it. So I implore the inspector here today to uphold their decisions and not let this development go ahead. During my time as a resident here, I've never seen the land left as it is today, full of weeds and unmaintained.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can't hear a word.
So that's my fault.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that better?
That's much better.
I apologise.
Sorry, I'm noting down what you say it, so. Just say that.
Oh, sorry. It's no fucking, sorry. Right, so during my time as a resident here, I've never seen the land left as it is today, full of weeds and unmaintained when all the other farmland is being worked. This says to me that this is a done deal. Given the passion with which residents support this, it's heartbreaking. So we've covered air quality.
Mr. Dunton might say about it.
Okay. Poor and unlawful air quality is a known serious issue. The 2018 measurements exceeded the legal limits, and I'm unaware of anything being done to it. It will only increase with additional homes and vehicles. Predictions provided by law, as is the case with their traffic reports, are out of date and therefore can't be trusted. Just like the badger report law paid for, which stated no badgers were present, even when residents had them on camera. Law's proposal for investment in cycle paths and public transport as a way to mitigate air quality concerns will have little to no effect. I, as a resident with a family, know firsthand you need a car to get anywhere from this site. This is a beautiful piece of land. We regularly walk the public footpaths with our children. The openness is stunning, breathtaking. This development will destroy it, gone forever. When we walk, we spot various animals and plants, and we use it as an educational opportunity for the children on how important nature is. They look out over the field every day, and we often stand at the back of the garden spotting various animals and watching the picturesque sunsets. We cuddle up as a family on the patio and watch the bats fly around. They know how lucky they are to be surrounded by such natural beauty, and when their friends visit, they comment on how they wish they lived there instead of looking out onto sprawling houses or flats. After stressful and busy days, we always look out over the land and feel relaxed and refreshed. Having such openness and nature does wonders for your well-being and mental health, as I'm sure other residents can also attest to. What do I tell them when it's destroyed and gone forever? Sorry kids, your gorgeous open space that we love so much has been destroyed. Not to mention you can't get a doctor's appointment because you're oversubscribed, and a stranger in the house built worryingly close to us can see in our garden and windows. But don't worry, someone's making money because of it. That's what matters, because we, the residents, certainly don't. The destruction of Greenbelt, based on the argument they provide much needed housing, is ill-conceived, considering there are currently planning permissions, as Mr. Dad has spoken about. One of the government's key stipulations of the development is Greenbelt is limited and sensitive. This is neither. It's a substantial site that nearly doubles the current site, offering no reflection of the surrounding area. Why haven't the 79 brownfield sites in Basildon been examined instead? And has COVID taught us nothing? There is every possibility we may once again need to rely much more heavily on homegrown projects. Why destroy farmland? I believe we've covered the safety of Dunton Road. This is incredibly unsafe. Residents on multiple occasions have reported near misses due to people going too fast, as it is tantamount a lane, and there are regular accidents because people are using it as a cut through from the A127. GP numbers, I believe, have been covered, as have school places. So I apologise, my speech is going to go all right because I wasn't prepared for that, but I ask you, please make the right decision and protect our local land and support the people on top of our day jobs and families who work tirelessly and passionately to protect something we care so very much about. Thank you.
after Ms. Moritz, Mindless, Sally Mindless? Yeah.
Good morning, I'm sorry if I repeat some things, but obviously we weren't advised with this, so I'm going to read it as it is. I apologise for that if it is doubled, but I'll do my best to cut out if necessary. Many thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak today regarding the proposed building of 260 homes on the land south of Dunton Road. Speaking as one of the long-term residents in Steepleview of 45 years, we bought the property because we were assured of no long-term plans to build on green belt, and the area was considered as a safe, happy and healthy environment to bring up families. Even children today learn about the environment they live in. The Secretary of State, Michael Gove, stated in his levelling up speech in March 2023, and I quote, that brownfield sites were to be used and to preserve green belt erosion. Loss of green belt and open space where we live since the houses were built along with poor air quality and noise levels will be a major concern for people's general and mental health for the young and the elderly. The A127, which is used as a rat run into the Dunton Road, has been reported in 2020 that air quality exceeded legal limits of nitrogen dioxide. However, data is out of date and needs to be reassessed, along with added risk of accidents, as we as residents only have one way in and one way out from King's Road. We will find it difficult, extremely difficult, to enter in onto the Dunton Road. There is no guaranteed infrastructure for schools, doctors and dental surgeries. All local schools is at least 2 to 3 miles to either Oak Bridge, South Green or Billericay. It's unsafe on a country road to walk to schools. People will drive. Doctor surgeries are full. There's not an efficient, adequate bus service. We currently have one a day, and in the past 45 years that hasn't changed. That's why we all have cars, because there are still limited bus service with approximately 600 cars on our estate, taking it as 2 cars a household. Some people have 4. With another 600 plus cars and lorries using the Dunton Road if this goes ahead on a daily basis, and worse, on boots out days, and no plans as yet to widen the road to cope with extra vehicles, and pavement is only one side of the road. Drainage and flood. I'll hold up this because this is the flooded Dunton Road, which has never changed since I moved there. Has a hydrological survey for floods been assessed, as the Dunton Road is a high-risk flood area along with surrounding area? Has drainage patterns and soil analysis been done by a professional hydrologist and geologist, as the area was clay soil, so drainage is very poor. Local residents early on in the year had water in their gas pipes and had to have their drives dug up where there is access water going into the homes. Has there been a professional wildlife conservation survey done? If you ladies and gentlemen like to hold your posters up, this is the type of wildlife that we have in the area. It is massive. Nature, once that's gone, will not be replaced. Nature, as you may be aware, is a massive part in helping people with mental health for young and the elderly. We are passionate about the environment that we live in, so please be respectful and be human beings and stop this build of 269 homes. Thank you.
Mr. Gibson, after this one, please.
You can hear me. I'll be honest, much of what I was going to say has already been said, and really I came today as a resident to provide some lived experience to the appeal outside of the formality of what takes place.
I moved here from London 10 years ago, and I moved here because of the space, the undulating hills, the green, and the contrast between the town centre and the residential areas, and living on the edge of that, and that was why we chose to move here. And I think that we're all passionate because we're already impacted by the lack of services and the lack of infrastructure and transport, public transport links that we have already been talked about. When I moved here, there was just 2 of us and it was fine. Since becoming a family, I feel isolated. I feel isolated from services, from schools, from shops, from doctors and places of congregation, actually. That's what I feel most isolated from. And having an additional 269 properties developed just down the road will further compound that. And our beautiful area is already dominated by some of these issues, not least the road that's already been mentioned. And the idea that we will be using the A127, which you'll see upon visit, is like a motorway, as a route to walk to places, as the people that move in, so they've used that route as an acceptable route. But yeah, everything else that I wanted to say has been covered, so I won't take any more time. Thank you.
I have lived in my property for over 17 years. I have never walked to a supermarket, a doctor's surgery, or walked with my children to school. In fact, our home is not in any catchment area for any school locally. I don't walk because it's either too far or too dangerous. I know of no neighbours who use anything other than their motor vehicles to get their children and families to where they have to be. I work half a mile from home. I would not walk or cycle for one reason. It's too dangerous on Dunton Road. It's not a sustainable location for development. In the Place Services Landscape Report, it states that planning permission will be refused if it causes harm to the character of the surrounding area. When you come to look at the site, which currently is not representative of its usual beauty, you will see that it will decimate the character of the area. This land is currently sustainable. It produces a food source which is harvested and processed within a 20 to 30 mile radius from where it is grown. The NPPF is a presumption in favour of sustainable development, something this development will not be. Indeed, Section 2 states that the UK has agreed to pursue 17 global goals for sustainable developments. This includes economic well-being and environmental protection. This planning application does not achieve either. This land is Greenbelt. This land has a high natural heritage value. Greenbelt is more profitable than town centres for development, but financial gain is surely not a reason to allow this. There are currently no less than 5,000 planning consents in Basildon coming forward. This amount is more than adequate to fulfil the housing supply numbers in Basildon for the next 5 years, as long as potential developers are not land banking these sites for some unknown reason. We do not need to permanently damage this visually beautiful, wildlife abundant piece of arable land. Another major concern, and I know others have touched on it, is air quality, but I'm passionate about it, so I'm going to say. We have been through 2 local council meetings where an overwhelming majority of our local councillors, these individuals who are elected by people that live in our communities, have rejected this proposal due to the extremely poor air quality. Not only does Blaw's report test the air quality around 3.5 to 4 miles from this site, it also states, to quote, there are air quality concerns associated with the build-up of congestion on this route. Also within Blaw's report, it also states that after the expiry of 1 year from the date of this report, the report should be referred for reassessment and, if necessary, reappraisal. So for clarity, we are currently basing our judgments of this build on out-of-date data that was collated in September 2019, over 4 years ago. This is not acceptable and will impact on residents' health. The current UK Prime Minister has stated, under my plans, if a local community has clearly judged the development to be inappropriate, there are no circumstances in which planning permission should be granted. More homes can be built whilst protecting the greenbelt and our precious landscapes. Data shows that well over 1 million homes could be built across the country on brownfield sites. He goes on to say, it is crucial to the character of our nation not to allow it to be demolished or depleted for financial gain. Finally, local elected councillors, in fact 2 different sets of county elected councillors, twice have overwhelmingly rejected this proposal for many, many reasons. These people live in this area, they know this area, they are passionate about this area, as are the people who live in this community. With the utmost respect, is it right that individuals can come to this inquiry, some from over 100 miles away, and give verdicts on such proposals that will potentially have an everlasting, terribly negative impact on the place we call home? Thank you for listening, and please, when you go to your own homes at the end of this inquiry, I ask you to leave our beautiful, tranquil environment we call home as beautiful as it currently is. Thank you. Greengage Cottage.
Sorry, the road name.
Dunton Road.
Dunton Road, so you're actually.
Yes, next to the proposed development.
And I just need to make sure that I've got this right, your place of work is less than half a mile, it's half.
To the entrance of my place of work is around half a mile from my drive.
That you would never walk.
I've worked there for over 10 years. I've never walked. I have cycled once, obviously there and back, and I nearly got knocked off my bike on the way home. So I would not do that again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Today I have come here with the permission of my school because they also understand the impact of this build. I am a young teenage girl and I am disappointed with the developers who wish to destroy our precious green belt. I have come here today to show my support against this development. I have grown up with this land around me, watching the hay bales being put out and having my picture taken every single year. What makes me even more upset is that the gatekeepers are allowing farmlands to be developed, even though there is wildlife in our fields, with evidence of badgers visiting the residents of Stevenview. And to name but a few wildlife that would be harmed due to this construction is badgers, foxes, bats, birds, and pheasants. I've earned our forefathers fought for this exact piece of land. Please do not be the inspectorate that allows it to be demolished for financial gain. Living here has not been without its doubts. I have to get a lift to and from school, and the bus stop is too far away, and my parents do not want me walking down the narrow path of Dunton Road, due to vehicles driving too fast coming up the A127. School is overcrowded, and there is nothing I can get to by foot locally. I understand that planning officers took away our objection for air quality behind closed doors. It was barely won on a vote by councillors who had not been party to the final decision. Please, Inspector, I ask you to show me during this inquiry that air quality is not a concern in the area we grow up in. I need to know mine and my family's and all the residents of Stevenview's health is not at risk. This leaves me to ask you, can you, Inspectorate, save our green belt?
Councillor Sargent. And then Councillor Allen, please.
Yes. Good morning. I am Councillor Terry Sargent. I actually live in the Crouch Ward in Bridge, and my role on the council is the cabinet member for communities. I'd like to commend the community that has spoken today for the words that you have said to bring to this committee to make sure or to make them aware of what you have to put up with every day.
I've represented the Crouch Hall since May 2002. During that time, Steepleview has gone through substantial housing development. Due to the size of the development, I have lobbied the then Primary Care Trust for a GP surgery and Essex County Council for a school because of the scale of the development. Land was set aside at one time for those vital facilities, but later, as more homes were built, the land set aside was used for more homes instead. Noak Bridge is the closest neighbourhood to Steepleview and has gone through similar large-scale housing development, but had a primary school built and eventually a GP surgery. The GP surgery is currently at capacity and is the only GP surgery in the Crouch Ward. The school has been expanded twice and is now at capacity. There are only 2 schools in the Crouch Ward, Noak Bridge and Craig's Hill, although this school is mainly attended by traveller children from nearby Oak Lane travel site. This demonstrates that there is insufficient healthcare and education services provision in the Crouch Ward, and the Law Home's proposal would impact those services even further. When the local plan was withdrawn, it had my full support, as the housing development proposals were within the Crouch Ward, all on Greenbelt. The amount of building proposed would totally overwhelm and overpopulate the Crouch Ward, turning it into an urban area instead of a semi-rural countryside location. Residents who had moved here from townships to live in the countryside would have to live with the consequences and return to urban living in the countryside, but without the facilities. However, the withdrawal of the local plan has not deterred the housing proposals put forward within the Crouch Ward, all on the Green Belt, which is why I am here today to try and put a stop on the urbanisation of semi-rural areas without the necessary services which will overwhelm and overpopulate Steepleview. We are all aware of the need for new homes to be built, but they must be built in suitable, sustainable locations. The Law Homes proposal is neither. There are no proposals within the planning application to build a GP surgery, only a marginal contribution for healthcare, which could be used for facilities elsewhere in the borough. There is no school proposal, only a contribution towards education, and where would this be spent? The site lies north of the A127 and children's safety is put at risk with inadequate transport facilities. Existing children already attend schools over the borough, taken by car because of the poor bus service, when provision should be made locally to prevent travelling. Despite what the experts are saying, this area is badly in need of a new school. The leisure facilities provision on this development proposes a substantial contribution. However, this should not compensate for the health and education needs of the whole community. The NPPF Para 2 Sustainable Development states, a social objective is to support strong, vibrant, healthy communities by ensuring that a sufficient number and range of homes can be provided to meet the needs of present and future generations, and by fostering well-designed, beautiful and safe places with accessible services, open spaces that reflect current, future needs and support communities' health, social and cultural well-being. Any advanced impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The planning applications does not meet this side of the NPPF social objective requirements. In the NPPF, para 4, pre-application engagement, it states early engagement has significant potential to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the planning application system for all parties. Good quality pre-application discussion enables better coordination between public and private resources and improved outcomes for the community. It also states, number 95, it's important that a sufficient choice of school places is available to meet the needs of existing and new communities. Local planning authorities should take a proactive, positive, collaborative approach to meeting this requirement and to development that will widen choice in education. They should give great weight to the need to create expand to schools through the preparation of plans and to work with school promoters, delivery partners and statutory bodies to identify and resolve key planning issues before applications are submitted. Early engagement does not appear to be met in this pre-app stage. Promoting health and safe communities, para 8. Guard against the unnecessary loss of valued facilities and services, particularly where this would reduce the community's ability to meet its day-to-day needs. Ensure that established shops, facilities and services can develop and modernise and are retained for the benefit of the community. Again, this planning application does not meet promoting healthy, safe communities. The local road network. Dunton Road is extremely busy, with most cars using it as a speed track and a rat run off the A127. I have lobbied county councillors to bring in further traffic calming measures to reduce the speed, but no action has been taken yet. The impact 269 homes will have on this very busy road will cause further congestion, more speeding, and could put the safety of residents at risk. Emphasis is put on walking and cycling, but there are no footpaths along Dunton Road to walk or cycle to the shops. It's far too dangerous. The only means of residents accessing services from this area of Steeple View is by car. The bus service is inadequate and impractical. It does not offer a frequent service and does not allow residents to get directly to healthcare, schools and shops, forcing them to use their cars or walk along a busy road with no footpath. And finally, the green belt. The planning application does not meet the green belt purposes. It does not check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas, nor does it assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. There is no desire from residents to sacrifice prime arable greenbelt land, which could grow sustainable food locally and more viably than having to import food at huge cost. There is no desire for 269 homes that will not provide the local community with adequate local services or adequate bus or travel plans. There is no desire for residents to have to travel all over the borough to reach schools and healthcare facilities that should be met locally. And there is no desire for residents to live in an area that has poor air quality, made worse by concreting over their green lung.
So, and then finally, after councillor Allen, it's Simon. Already done. Thank you.
I'll just restrict my remarks to that what hasn't been mentioned already. I'd just like to emphasise this green belt site is an agricultural use, providing a crop contributing to the UK food chain. It's not derelict nor idle land, and in the light of recent food chain problems due to, for example, the Ukraine war, where soon afterwards there was concerned that we weren't going to get enough wheat for it, so it was important to preserve agricultural land as a UK resource altogether. The site contributes significantly to the openness of the Greenbelt, with views of open countryside from the A127 along the southern boundary, from Dunton Road along the north boundary, and from the rear of homes along King's Road, forming the eastern boundary. It's essential to retain this open site, which makes a significant contribution to provide a limit to the urban sprawl westwards beyond King's Road. The King's Road boundary at the moment marks the western extent of residential ribbon development along Dunton Road, extending for half a mile from No Kill Road. Ribbon development was a development that was frowned upon in planning terms many years ago, and I think it's as well to note that this is what is happening along Dunton Road. And the site we've developed will further extend the undesirable ribbon development westwards away from service provisions such as schools, shops and bus routes. Thus the development is unsustainable because car ownership will be essential to carry out daily living necessities. The ribbon type development leads to urban sprawl in areas bereft of convenient urban facilities and services. For example, the nearest available primary school, Mill House, is 1.5 miles away, and the nearest supermarket over 1.5 miles away. There's no convenient bus route serving this development. And current planning ethos is to provide sustainable development where car use is not essential. Generally, this means basing developments on the borders of towns and villages to become part of those towns and villages, not as a ribbon along rural roads separated from urban facilities. I hope these are sufficient reasons for you to refuse this housing development. Thank you.
Going last, everybody's said what I wanted to say, but I do want to support everything that everybody has said as the residents of Steepleview. I moved to Steepleview over 20 years ago from London. I moved there because it was a safe, open environment with countryside views, which I haven't had previously. I am proud to call Steepleview my home, as are the other residents, and we really desperately do not need the open space and our green belt and our wildlife to be destroyed by this development. I won't say any more because it's been said already, but I do wish this appeal to be supported by the inspectorate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll have a short adjournment now. It's 11:40, so we'll have a 10-minute, we'll go by the clock there actually, a 10-minute adjournment until 11:50, and then we'll start back with the local authorities case. So the and have you received the email about the plan?
Yes.
Is that in hand?
Yes.
Time frame?
This morning.
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah.
Might be quite good to have full evidence.
Yeah.
If it's all possible, I don't know.
Yeah.
If possible.
Yes, I mean, it's been done now, so I'm sorry, it's just been printed.
Okay, right, okay, so we'll adjourn then until 11:50, so the inquiry's adjourned. We can just brief Mr. Simons as to the way it's
That's all right, so then Mr. Simons.
Everyone, quiet down.
Members of the public, excuse me, can you hear me? Hello? If the inquiry is resumed and you want to have a private conversation, you can do so outside of the room because the background noise is the same impact as trying to hear, okay? If you do that outside and then when you're in here, you either, you need to be a little bit quieter if that's possible, thank you.
So that we're waiting for the overlay plan that the inspection was asked for, and it's being finished by hand, due to, unfortunately, as I understand it, IT data transference and corruption in that. I wonder whether we should start.
Happy to make it, no need to hold up completely, as long as I've got it before I start, I'm happy.
I think the officers indicated it'd be about 20 minutes from probably 15 now, so
Happy to make a start.
yeah, you can make a start.
I call Mr. Lewis Reynolds then, please.
I just check this out, does anybody know where it's Mr. Dice?
Oh.
Sorry?
I'll get referred. Probably, if he's been answering witness questions, we'll get too far without it.
Yeah, you just get yourself set up and so. Just for my benefits as well, sorry, it seems to me to be quite slow downloading the documents, so if there is anything you know you can refer to, I'd rather download them, you just can't use them. Thanks.
So, Mr. Reynolds' proof, obviously, or he's going to deal with some things. The LDIR, which is CD 8.45. Take that briefly, I think.
8.45.
8.45, yeah. Volume 1 is the landscape character assessment, which is 8.43.
Yeah.
I also 8.44, which is the green belt landscape character study. Mr. Chard's proof probably. And CD 2.4, which is the landscape boundary study. I think that's sort of
Okay, I won't download all those now, but when you do, you just be aware that it's not
Would you like this reading before, not now, but before I start off? Yeah, I'll do that when I get to it.
Okay, over to you, Alison.
Good morning, just Mr. Reynolds. So I understand we've been talking about it, that you want to make some small amendments to your proof. That'd be helpful if you could take us through those so that everyone's absolutely clear on the same page.
Of course, hopefully you can all hear me as well. So I'll go through those changes changes. So to section 2 of my proof of evidence, I've included MPPF para 148 at para 2.6 and MPPF para 150 at para 2.8. In section 3, I've included the area 20 description from the Greenbelt and Landscape Capacity Assessment or Study. The Greenbelt and Landscape Capacity Assessment that was alongside of the volume 2.
Councillor, are you making changes right now? Is there an updated version of the proof?
So, oh, sorry, apologies. There is a few copies of the updated proof that we can take down.
So we distributed now, and then you'll highlight for us where the changes are.
Have you got have we got just a summary of those changes, so rather than give more?
No, we haven't, Mr. Reynolds is going to go through that.
So much. Thank you so much. Do you know what it's so? Do you want to these emails?
Can we start again?
Sorry.
So start from the start again.
Yeah, okay, so section 2 of my proof includes NPPF para 148 at paragraph 2.6, NPPF para 150 at para 2.8. We then move to section 3. I've included a description of the location and description of area 20 from the Greenbelt and Landscape Capacity Study, volume 2 of the Landscape Character Assessment.
Could you say the paragraph numbers?
At para 3.3, yes.
Thank you.
I've included the qualities of area 20 at para 3.4. I've included the relationship with adjacent areas at para 3.5. And at para 3.6, I've reworded my original para 3.3. For the next section, or not section, sorry, within this same section under the Basildon outline landscape appraisals, the local landscape features are included at para 3.8. The visual context is included at para 3.9. The key site features and characteristics are included at para 3.10. And similarly to the above, para 3.11 rewords my original para 3.6. Staying in this section.
Sorry, so when you said he's making some corrections to his proof, I didn't know you meant he's putting in new sections.
To be very honest, nor did I, Matt. I haven't had a chance to go through either. I thought there were non-material changes.
I thought you meant sort of typos and
yeah.
Perhaps I could just maybe try and help, because firstly, it's very, I've no system of Stuart Reynolds, but I mean, it's got to ask questions of this witness in, under an hour. And there's quite a lot when we were in on section 3, there's quite a lot of new stuff, but which is difficult. However, it seems to me so far anyway, Mr. Reynolds, the nature of the new stuff is actually just to include loads of references to things that are already in core documents already. So, all the things in italics that are already just extracts from things that are already in the papers. I wouldn't, might it not be a bit easier, open question, sorry to consider, just keep the original proof that we've all got I prepared for, and just whenever we get to, say, in section 3, the 2014 study or whatever, if there are relevant bits to which she wants to draw your attention, just remember that the qualities to be safeguarded are on page whatever they are of the actual document itself, rather than needing to substitute in the new proof. It would make my life certainly an awful lot easier trying to cross-examine things.
That's not supposed to be. I was thinking to myself, the change of the MPPF changing, the paragraphs changing, that was going to cause Mr. Simon's problem. comments, because you may well have cross-examination questions that, you know, take Mr Reynolds to a particular paragraph, and that's not fair to him really, he's got to box across. So that sounds fair to me, unless there's anything that Mr Reynolds needs to correct that's wrong, then I take the point.
So what is the reason for why is this being done?
Why is it changed? Actually, did explain, Mr Reynolds.
Okay, so apologies, yes, so the context is that I came off maternity leave very recently and have only just been able to get back into this, so I had asked colleagues to make my changes, and there were some errors that I've obviously gone back and re-reviewed to make those changes. I do agree with Mr Simons and Ms Holly in terms of how we can go forward. The corrections then would be in the purposes section, which I can discuss those. So
section 6 is that?
That's correct. Yes, so section 6. I've removed the other purposes that aren't relevant to this inquiry. So purposes 2, 4, and 5 have been removed, and I have just therefore focused on purpose 1 and 2. Those were the errors in the 1 and 3. Sorry, yes. So they were the errors, and then my conclusion has been made more concise.
To be fair, I'm not sure that is what I mean. Yeah, that's fair about it. More concise. Your analysis of purpose 1 in the original brief reference was at paragraph 6.1. Was very concise. It was a single paragraph. The new analysis of purpose 1 is over a page. And that's the sort of thing that not really gets so much the same sort of thing, but that really is sort of stuff, you know, it's important stuff for example. It's one of the main issues. Unfortunately, probably to read so now, but you know, now there's 3 pages on purposes, whereas before it's all done most of the way.
Is there anything outside of section 6?
Yes. In section 7, there are additional comments on these. In fact, I don't think that's changed.
I would suggest hopefully that it's really not fair to the other side if we add paragraphs in, so we can live with the proof. I think we all understand that you might feel slightly differently,
yes,
and then you're on maternity leave.
Yes.
Thanks to
I'm happy with that, and yeah, apologies for any confusion.
Obviously, if it's to exclude just on the basis of that it's new, I think one would have to ask ourselves firstly what the changes are. They may be relevant and essential to your reading and assessment. 2, then whatever they are, is the other side, the applicant, prejudiced? Because obviously if they're not prejudiced, then they should be in. If they are, then we'll hear what those are. If they, so I don't want to be, I haven't seen it yet, I don't want to exclude matters just because it falls today. Obviously the circumstances have been raised by Mr. Reynolds, and we accept that to 6, but clearly if there are changes or errors or amendments, then I would certainly like to consider what those are and see if the actual applicant is prejudiced or anyone is prejudiced, and also prejudiced. It may also save time in the long run because there may be matters that we wanted to raise or not raise. So I think it's best to hear what those changes are and understand whether it does actually prejudice anyone.
The difficulty is, as I've also prepared questions on the proof of evidence as it is, and when the Solly said anything, any changes or any new documents, I understood that to be correction of typos. As I've got to section 2, we're only on section 2, I'm already, it's just new sections of the proof of evidence. Now, if that was the case, it should have been submitted, in my view, as a rebuttal, as an amendment or a correction, or under the heading of as a rebuttal, prior to the inquiry opening, so that everybody has an opportunity to comment
to prepare correctly on the correct version. And I don't consider it as fair to the parties present to proceed and to be expecting people to cross-reference and amend it when witnesses about to give evidence.
Just to clarify that, it's my witness, I've made a decision, we're going to proceed on the basis of what's submitted. We haven't made a 5-day case, we haven't made a case for late evidence, and I entirely respect the what's thinking, so that's the end as far as I'm concerned.
So that's how we're going to proceed. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Rankins. I think I understand that you're acting in good faith, and we don't want to confuse anybody, and this will be, so the previous statement is read, I'd just like to, I've got about a dozen points for you just to go through in cheap. For the benefit perhaps of the non-expert people in the room who are part of the proceedings, could you help us with the distinction between, on one hand, impacts the landscape character of visual media, so that's on one hand, and on the other hand, can't read out openness, and how we go about those?
Yes, of course. So, as you say, there is a difference between what's kind of typically understood as landscape and visual amenity, and so landscape character and visual amenity versus greenbelt, and in particular, in my proof of evidence, the openness of the greenbelt and the purposes. So, in typical landscape and visual amenity terms, the process is kind of carried out under what's called a landscape and visual impact assessment, where the landscape character and its features are assessed, and the visual receptors, that is people visiting or using routes or public rights of way, or could include car users using roads, are assessed in terms of their their landscape character, their value, their susceptibility, and then their magnitude of change and their significance of effects as well. Whereas the assessment of greenbelt openness deals with it deals with the visual aspects as a bit of crossover. So where we are here, the assessment of visual effects in LVIA terms, it deals with the effects of change and development on the views available to those people, those receptors, using those public rights of way, and the visual amenity as defined by our relevant guidance, which is under the guidelines for landscape visual impact assessment, whereas an assessment on the impact of the proposal on the openness of greenbelt, where it is considered relevant to do so, requires a judgment based on the circumstances in line with PPG. So the visual aspect of openness as it relates to greenbelt isn't measured in exactly the same way an LVA would be assessed. I think Mr. Childers made reference to that in his own proof of evidence, it being a more of a holistic approach rather than a quantifiable one and a measured one. So it should be more of a holistic approach. What I would say is that the change that is visible, that we can obviously see here, is proof of harm in terms of openness, and consequently where the proposals are considered to be visually intrusive, which in my opinion they are, they will inevitably affect the openness of the greenbelt, and that is regardless of the residual visual effects in LVIA terms. I hope that clarifies.
I wanted to take you to Place Services LVIR. So that is CD 8.45. We'll just wait a moment to make sure everyone can get that up on their screens. Oh, so it's the LVIR, it should be CD 8.45.
The Place Services Landscape and Visual Impact Review.
Yes, thank you, that makes sense. on that. So I realise that it ultimately concludes that the proposed scheme would have an adverse impact on landscape character, visual amenity, but it's recognised, this is page 22, in relation to the eastern compartment, the easternmost part of the site. Page 22, I can go with myself again. So it's sort of the very bottom right hand corner of page 22, right at the bottom, under conclusions and recommendations. So I just want to give you a chance to comment on that. You recognise this capacity of residential dwellings to the easternmost extent, the eastern compartment beyond the wooden block, which could likely assimilate within the landscape surroundings without suffering detrimental effect on landscape character. Do you have any comments or qualification on that?
Yes, I do. And so I should note, so these assessments, so these reviews, apologies, so these reviews, these landscape visual impact reviews, we are undertaking a number of these at a broad scale for Basildon Borough Council for a number of different sites. And so, yes, so in this respect, I do recognise that from a landscape perspective, which is, like I'm saying, it's different to greenbelt openness. From a landscape perspective, there is capacity, and that is outlined within the Basildon Outline Landscape Appraisal document. I do recognise that, and I do accept that. Because I accept that, I also must reiterate that I agree with the Council's findings that opportunities for residential development in this area are limited, without resulting in major change in character, predominantly due to the openness of the greenbelt to the A127 and the barrier that this forms to associations with existing built development.
Then if we go on to page 23, the next part to electronically. You say also about the western portion could also assimilate residential dwellings with appropriate landscape mitigation in place. So do you stand by that? Would you qualify it?
Yes, again, from a landscape perspective, this part of the site would, it comes down to a question of the appropriateness then of the landscape mitigation coming forward and being proposed, of which I consider would result in poor design. That is due to an over-reliance on the remaining severed field to the west, east of the Steeple View Farm, as well as the introduction of which, so by severing that field, that landscape buffer, so there's obviously relying on that severed field as a landscape buffer, and that would further prejudice the use of that field for agricultural purposes. In addition to this, the introduction of hard and soft landscape features, including the southern boundary, which proposes funding, acoustic fencing and planting, would clearly result in a reduction to greenbelt openness. In fact, it emphasises the fact that this scheme results in a reduction of openness. In my view, the correct design response would have been a landscape-led one, and the landscape treatment along the eastern and southern boundaries would have determined the development response.
I'm sorry to jump back towards the document, but I note that at page 21 you said that overall the harm to landscape character was judged as moderate adverse, and you've obviously seen everyone's evidence now. Do you stand by that or not?
Yes, I can clarify that overall the harm to landscape character within our landscape visual impact review has been judged as moderate adverse, and therefore we would consider that to be substantial. We use substantial rather than the term significant because that has implications with EIA. So where we have said, where we do say substantial, we do also mean significant. Which is, again, I must stress this is in line with the council's own findings. With regards to visual amenity, when we carried out our review, we stated that the judgments of magnitude of change within their LVIA were too low. That was due to varying inconsistencies and missing information. So in particular, they were missing the duration of development, the scale, size and scale effects, which should be considered as part of an assessment of magnitude of change. It's also important to note that obviously the proposed development is far larger than the area shown within the Basildon Outline Landscape Appraisal Report. And I'm mindful, as stated within that appraisal report, that development of this area would be highly visible from the broad area to the north and the A127, and would have significant adverse landscape and visual effects on the Upper Crouch Valley Farmlands landscape character area. As far as I can see, there's been little change to the appeal scheme from my original review to demonstrate that adverse landscape and visual effects that we have identified would reduce to acceptable levels. Nevertheless, it is still my opinion that the conclusion in landscape terms is still valid when considering both the eastern and western compartments. In its current form, however, the approach, I would argue, is not consistent with policy or guidance, and therefore requires a design approach which is contextually sensitive and results from a proper working relationship between all parts of the design process.
So if we try and relate all this back to the greenbelt harm that you found, how do we do that when we get to?
So if we accept the scheme as it is, what this inevitably means in respect of greenbelt harm is that the appeal scheme, by its very location, the layout, the spread, the extent and quantum, as I've kind of outlined within my review, will substantially increase the visual perception and enclosure, as well as intrusion into the greenbelt, particularly where it extends eastwards and further reduces the openness of the site and to this part of the greenbelt. In addition to the visual harm, there would in turn be a substantial spatial loss of openness due to the size, scale, massing and quantum of the proposed residential development. And the open panoramic views that are readily available would in turn become heavily constrained and dominated by the built form and the landscape mitigation, as I've discussed coming forward.
Okay, and I appreciate and do stop me if I get a bit too far on this, but the professionals in the room will understand visual openness, spatial openness. But just for everyone, could you just briefly explain that?
So, visual openness in terms of greenbelt, it's not necessarily looking at the visual effects, although that is a good starting point in landscape and visual impact assessment. But it also looks at other aspects, including the long distance, the broader scale impacts as well.
Now I've mentioned CD 8.43, which is the landscape character assessment volume 1. Just want to factor in this is the character, the quality of the site, really, and ask if you've got anything to say about that. The landscape character areas LCA 9 up at Crouch Valley Farmlands.
Just to confirm, this is landscape character document. I wasn't expecting to be able to ask this question, but this witness myself lots of questions about character and appearance. It's not something we can accept.
Well, all right, it just the background, I think.
I don't mind obviously if it helps you, of course.
Well, we do take that.
Sorry to speak to this. Just take it to the relevant part of that report that you want to refer to.
It was very general, really. There's a note in Mr. Chard's proof paragraphs 3.60 and 3.70, and we're just picking that up really.
So it's helpful to be asked, I don't want to object. I just want to.
No, because I'm still looking into part of the parts of the documents, so once I'm on parts of the documents, and I've read it myself. Yeah.
But perhaps I'll rephrase, but just thinking about the qualities and the characteristics of the site and the impact that the development would have. If I'm barking up the wrong tree, then that's fair enough. I thought you might want to use that in your response to that question. I really want you just to think about the qualities and characteristics of the site and then relate that to the impact of the development. So, I'll leave you to do it your way.
If I may, so NPPF talks about the characteristics of Greenbelt, their essential characteristics as being open. So what I would like to just mention is obviously, yes, it is a landscape character document. There are obviously overlaps between that clearly, and I mean, Keith puts it is finely balanced. I guess this again is probably a finely balanced as well. So the landscape character assessment highlights qualities to be safeguarded, which are relevant to insofar as openness is concerned. It discusses views across the open farmland to St Mary the Virgin Church, and it also discusses the sense of separation of open land from Basildon created by the A127. I believe these are important qualities to consider when assessing openness. As I've kind of outlined and Mr. Child outlined within his proof of evidence, it's a holistic approach. So we do need to consider aspects from we do need to consider those other aspects in terms of landscape, character and visual amenity as well to help provide that kind of baseline in terms of where it goes forward. What I would say is the site is clearly open and panoramic, and obviously you visited the site yourself and you would have seen that. There are distant views northwards towards Little Bursted and longer distance views towards the wooded hills at Billericay. The sloping landform obviously allows views towards the River Crouch and the valley, and there is intervisibility between the open farmland, the river valley, and obviously those heritage assets within the distance as well. This is something that you're likely to experience on your site visit, and later again, when you do visit again, you'll see that.
Okay, so that's what you want to use.
Yes, my learned friend just raised the point that he wasn't expected to ask questions around the landscape review. But I'd like to just point out from our point of view, Rule 6, in our statement case, we appended that document. And also in the document that we are looking at, or the openness report, that's page 5, the appendices 1 is the landscape visual review document referred to at 8.5. And it was also mentioned in the same case. From the Rule 6 party, we obviously are not restricted the same way as the local authority are. And we have raised that in advance of the statement case and one of the things that we believe that the landscape visual impact review is an important document for us, and we would want to ask questions on it.
I didn't object to be clear to that being asked.
Okay, I've got a couple more points for you, Mr. Reynolds. If we go to Mr. Child's proof, please, page 23 and paragraph 5.25. So we're talking about beneficial effects caused by the increase in landscape features in the feels like offsetting the adverse effects caused by the loss of openness. Do you agree or disagree with that, Mr. Reynolds?
I agree, yes. He does state that there will be a loss of openness. However, this is also a sweeping generalisation. Although planting mitigation is usually a good way to reduce the potential landscape and visual effects of a proposed scheme, it does not automatically lead to beneficial results. Paragraph 4.5, page 16, refers to.
Just a minute, sorry. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to just make the point again that obviously paragraph 4.5, page 16 of Mr. Charles' proof refers to that new acoustic barrier going along the southern boundary with tree and hedgerow planting. This just obviously makes the point that that would result in a reduction. It emphasises the reduction of openness of the green belt there.
So the acoustic barrier, I think is 4.6, isn't it?
4.5, yes.
4.6, the southern boundary will comprise a new acoustic barrier. Don't get back to me about it, I think it's 4.6.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And then what I would also make a point in terms of that barrier then, so if we then move to paragraph 8.19 of Mr. Charles' proof.
So that's page 51.
Correct. Mr. Chard asserts that the proposals include substantial landscape buffers. That's a key point for me. The proposed features, I would, so in particular bunding and that acoustic fencing, but you can see within that sentence, he says the substantial landscape buffers will soften and integrate the proposed development, which will maintain open character. I would argue that they would do little to maintain those adverse effects, but as I've kind of outlined, on the contrary, would serve to emphasise the permanent loss of greenbelt and the substantial harm to openness of the greenbelt. To see that fully, I would refer to CD 2.4, which is the landscape boundary study. This demonstrates curtailed views, the visual perception of enclosure, and the clear reduction of openness.
Thank you. Those are all my points of clarification. We've got the plan that the inspector wanted, so subject to consider, you might look at that first for any questions.
Do half an hour, then pause now.
That's fine. Thank you.
Absolutely not. Happy to make this work.
From our point of view, we've now received the other documents, so it will be that if we do cause harm, we can take it to the residents and take it with the.
Sorry. thank you for doing that. We understand, thank you, what's been done. So happy either way, madam. Your hands happy to make a start and do half an hour and stop at 1 o'clock or?
I don't mind. I don't mind. I will do that. I'm your hands really.
I think it's better that you start break and
So let's do that. Thank you very much.
Can I just check whether this map accords with what you were expecting?
yes, we could with the other annotation one that makes sense, so thank you for doing that. Okay, so how long at the lunch break would you like?
Very much more than the witnesses have, so we're happy with the 45 minutes up.
So should we say 45?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so we'll have an adjournment until 1:15, start at 1:15, 1:15. Thank you.